"Get this clown out of my building before I call security." The man who spoke them sat behind a desk made of wood that cost more than most cars. His name was Richard Hashville. He was 62 years old. He had gray hair slicked back with expensive product. He wore a suit that cost $12,000. He did not stand up when he spoke. He did not need to stand. Men like Richard Hashville never stood for anyone. The young man at the door did not move. His name was Victor Johnson. He was 31 years old. He wore a simple navy blue suit that he bought at a department store. His shoes were clean but not expensive. He carried a brown leather bag over his shoulder. The bag held a laptop and a folder with his business plan inside. He had waited 3 months for this meeting. He had called the office 47 times. He had sent 63 emails. He had finally gotten 15 minutes on the calendar. Victor looked at the secretary who had walked him in. Her name was Diane. She was a thin woman with blonde hair and glasses. She looked at the floor. She did not look at Victor. She did not look at her boss. She just looked at the floor like she wanted to fall through it. "Mr. Hashville, I have an appointment," Victor said. His voice was calm and steady. "Your office confirmed it yesterday." Richard Hashville laughed. It was not a kind laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had never been told no in his entire life. "I don't care what my office confirmed," Richard said. "I took one look at you and I already know. You have nothing I want to hear." Victor stayed in the doorway. He did not step forward. He did not step back. He just stood there like a tree that refused to bend in the wind. "How can you know that?" Victor asked. "You have not even heard my pitch. You have not seen my numbers. You have not asked me a single question." Richard leaned back in his leather chair. Hashville Capital Management sat on the 44th floor of a building that Richard owned. He owned the whole building. He owned buildings all over the city. He owned buildings all over the country. He was worth $4.7 billion. He had been on the cover of Forbes magazine 11 times. "I know because I have been in this business for 40 years, Richard said. He put his feet up on his desk. "I can spot a winner and a loser in 3 seconds flat. You, my friend, are a loser." Victor reached into his bag. He pulled out the folder with his business plan. The folder was blue. It had his company logo on the front. The logo showed 2 hands shaking across a globe. The company was called Bridgepoint Financial. Victor had started it in his apartment 4 years ago with $800 and a used laptop. "If you would just look at these numbers," Victor said. He held out the folder. "We have grown by 300% each year for the past 3 years. Richard did not take the folder. He did not even look at it. He looked at Victor like Victor was something stuck to the bottom of his expensive shoe. 300% of nothing is still nothing," Richard said. "Let me guess. You have some app. Some technology thing. You want to change the world. You want to help the little people." "We help small business owners get loans," Victor said. "Banks turn them away. We do not. We have helped 12,000 businesses stay open. We have created over 40,000 jobs." Richard waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. "Charity work," Richard said. "That is not investing. That is charity work. I am not a charity. I am a businessman. I make money." "We have made money," Victor said. "We made $14 million in profit last year. We are on track to make $28 million this year." For 1 second, something flickered in Richard's eyes. It might have been interest, it might have been surprise, but then it was gone. He shook his head like Victor had just told a bad joke. $14 million, Richard said. "I spend $14 million on my summer house. I spend $14 million on my yacht. That is not real money." Victor put the folder back in his bag. He did not look angry. He did not look hurt. He just looked tired. He looked like a man who had heard these words before. He looked like a man who would hear these words again. "You know what your problem is," Richard said. He stood up now. He walked around his desk. He was a tall man. He was 6 feet 2 inches. He had played football in college. He had been a linebacker. He still moved like a man who expected people to get out of his way. Richard stopped 3 feet from Victor. He crossed his arms over his chest. He looked down at Victor. Victor was 5 feet 10 inches. He had to look up to meet Richard's eyes. "Your problem is that you do not understand how this world works," Richard said. "This world is not fair. This world does not care about your feelings. This world does not care about helping small businesses. This world cares about one thing, power, and you do not have any power." Victor did not blink. He did not look away. He held Richard's gaze like a man who had stared down worse things than a rich bully in a fancy suit. "I came here to offer you a chance to invest in something real," Victor said. "Something that helps people, something that makes money at the same time. I see now that was a mistake." Richard laughed again. This time the laugh was louder. It bounced off the walls of his big office. It echoed against the glass, and the wood and the expensive art. "A mistake," Richard said. "You coming here was not a mistake, it was a joke. You are a joke. Your little company is a joke. Do you know how many people like you I see every week?" Victor did not answer. He waited for Richard to continue. Richard was happy to continue. Richard loved the sound of his own voice. "I see 20 of you every week," Richard said. "All of you with your big dreams and your little folders. All of you thinking you are special. You are not special, you are nothing." Richard turned his back on Victor. He walked to the window. He looked out at the city below. The sun was setting. The buildings were turning gold and orange in the dying light. "You want to know the difference between me and those people down there," Richard said. He did not turn around. He talked to the glass. "I was born to win. They were born to lose. Some people are sheep. Some people are wolves. I am a wolf." "And what am I?" Victor asked. Richard turned around. He smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a cat that had cornered a mouse. "You are not even a sheep," Richard said. "You are whatever the sheep eat. Grass. You are grass. I could step on you and not even notice." Victor nodded slowly. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a business card. The card was simple. It was white with black letters. It had his name, his phone number, and his email. He set the card on the small table by the door. "In case you change your mind," Victor said. Richard laughed so hard he had to lean against his desk. "Change my mind," Richard said. "I will never change my mind. I know exactly what I am looking at. I am looking at a failure, a nobody, a waste of my time." Victor picked up his bag. He turned toward the door. He stopped. He turned back to face Richard one more time. "You do not know me," Victor said. "You do not know where I came from. You do not know what I have done. You do not know what I am going to do." "I do not need to know you," Richard said. "I can see everything I need to see. Now get out of my building before I have you thrown out." Victor walked out the door. He walked past Diane. She still would not look at him. He walked down the long hallway with its thick carpet and its fancy paintings. He passed the other offices. None of them looked up as Victor walked by. He reached the elevator. He pressed the button. He waited. The elevator arrived with a soft ding. The doors slid open. Victor stepped inside. He pressed the button for the lobby. The doors slid closed. He was alone. Victor reached into his bag. He pulled out his phone. He pressed a button. The phone connected to a number that very few people had. The line rang once. A voice answered. "How did it go?" the voice asked. "About how I expected," Victor said. He did not even look at the folder. He did not ask a single question about the business. "What did he say?" "He called me grass," Victor said. "He said he could step on me and not even notice." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then the voice spoke again. "Does he know?" the voice asked. "He does not know anything," Victor said. "He did not even bother to look me up. He saw my face and made up his mind." "What do you want to do?" Victor was quiet for a moment. The elevator kept going down. The numbers on the screen got smaller. 44, 43, 42, 41. "Proceed with the plan," Victor said. "All of it." "Are you sure?" the voice asked. "Once we start, we cannot stop." "I am sure," Victor said. "Richard Hashville is about to learn a very expensive lesson." The elevator reached the lobby. The doors slid open. Victor walked out into the big marble hall. His shoes clicked on the stone floor. He walked past the security desk. He walked past the other people in their expensive suits. He walked out the front door and into the cool evening air. He stopped on the sidewalk. He looked up at the building. Somewhere up there on the 44th floor, Richard Hashville was probably already on to his next meeting. He was probably already making his next deal. He had probably already forgotten about the young black man with the blue folder, but Victor had not forgotten. Victor would never forget. He pulled out his phone again. He opened an app. The app showed a number. The number was very large. It had a lot of zeros in it. Victor looked at the number for a long time. Then he smiled. It was a small smile. It was the smile of a man who knew something that no one else knew. Victor Johnson was not just the founder of Bridgepoint Financial. He was not just a man who helped small businesses get loans. He was also the silent owner of 17 other companies. He was the anonymous investor behind 3 of the biggest tech startups of the past 5 years. He had a net worth of $9.2 billion. He was almost twice as rich as Richard Hashville. No one knew this. Victor liked it that way. He had learned early in life that people treated you different when they knew you were rich. They smiled at you when they wanted something. They hated you when you had what they wanted. They never saw the real you. They only saw the money. So Victor had hidden his money. He had hidden it behind shell companies and trusts and legal structures that only 3 lawyers in the world understood. On paper, he was just a small businessman who helped other small business owners. In reality, he was one of the richest people in the country. And Richard Hashville had just called him grass. Victor put his phone away. He walked down the street. He passed a woman asking for money. He gave her a $20 bill. She looked at him with surprise. He kept walking. His car was parked 3 blocks away. It was not a fancy car. It was a black Honda that was 5 years old. Victor did not need a fancy car. He did not need fancy things. He had grown up poor. He had grown up in a 1-room apartment with his mother and his 2 sisters. He had worn clothes from the thrift store. He had eaten rice and beans 5 days a week. He had promised himself that he would never forget where he came from. He had promised himself that he would help people like his mother, people who worked hard, people who tried to do the right thing, people who just needed someone to believe in them. That was why he had started Bridgepoint. That was why he had helped 12,000 businesses. That was why he had created 40,000 jobs. He was not doing it for the money. He already had more money than he could ever spend. He was doing it because it was right. But sometimes, doing the right thing was not enough. Sometimes you had to teach the bad people a lesson. Sometimes you had to show them that they were not as powerful as they thought they were. Richard Hashville was about to learn that lesson. Victor got into his car. He started the engine. He pulled out into traffic. The city moved around him. Horns honked. Lights changed. People crossed the street without looking. Everyone was in a hurry. Everyone was going somewhere. Everyone had somewhere to be. Victor drove uptown. He drove past the park. He drove past the museum. He drove past the fancy apartments where people like Richard Hashville lived. He kept driving until he reached a neighborhood that Richard Hashville had probably never visited. A neighborhood with smaller buildings and older cars. A neighborhood where people knew each other's names. He parked in front of a small restaurant. The sign above the door said, "Mama Grace's Kitchen." The paint was peeling. The windows were foggy, but the smell coming from inside was amazing. It smelled like fried chicken and collard greens and cornbread and sweet potato pie. Victor got out of his car. He walked into the restaurant. A bell jingled above the door. The place was small. There were maybe 10 tables. Half of them were full. People were eating and talking and laughing. A basketball game played on an old television in the corner. An old woman came out from the kitchen. She was short and round. She had gray hair pulled back in a bun. She wore a white apron over a blue dress. Her face was lined with years of hard work, but her eyes were bright and sharp. "Victor," the woman said. Her face broke into a huge smile. "My boy, come here." Victor walked over to her. She wrapped him in a hug that was stronger than it looked. She smelled like vanilla and cinnamon and home. "Hey, Mama Grace," Victor said. Mama Grace stepped back and looked at him. She studied his face like she was reading a book. "You look tired," she said, "and hungry. When did you last eat?" "I had lunch," Victor said. "That was hours ago," Mama Grace said. "Sit down, I will fix you a plate." She pushed him toward a table in the corner. He did not argue. You did not argue with Mama Grace. He sat down. She disappeared into the kitchen. Victor looked around the restaurant. He had been coming here since he was a child. His mother used to bring him here on special occasions, birthdays, report card days, the day he got into college. Mama Grace had always been there. She had always had a plate of food and a kind word. When Victor had made his first $1 million, the first thing he did was pay off Mama Grace's mortgage. When he made his first $100 million, he bought the building next door and expanded her restaurant. When he made his first $1 billion, he set up a trust that would pay all of her bills for the rest of her life. She did not know where the money came from. She thought it came from the city. Victor never told her the truth. He did not need credit. He just needed her to be okay. Mama Grace came back with a plate piled high with food. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, cornbread, a slice of pie for dessert. She set it down in front of him. She sat down across from him. "Now," she said, "tell me what is wrong." Victor picked up a fork. He took a bite of the mashed potatoes. They were perfect. They were always perfect. "I had a meeting today," Victor said. "With an investor. It did not go well." "What happened?" "He did not want to hear what I had to say," Victor said. "He looked at me and made up his mind before I could even open my mouth." Mama Grace nodded slowly. She understood. She had lived in this country for 83 years. She understood better than most. "Some people are blind," she said. "They look right at you and they do not see you. They see what they expect to see." "He called me grass," Victor said. "He said he could step on me." Mama Grace's eyes went hard. Her mouth became a thin line. For a moment, she did not look like a sweet old lady who made fried chicken. She looked like a warrior who had seen too many battles. "That man does not know who he is talking to," she said. "No," Victor said, "he does not." "What are you going to do?" Victor took another bite of his food. He chewed slowly. He thought about the question. "I am going to show him," Victor said. "I am going to show him who I really am." Mama Grace reached across the table. She put her hand on top of his. Her hand was rough from decades of cooking. Her grip was strong. "Be careful," she said. "Revenge is a poison. You drink it hoping the other person will die, but it kills you instead." "This is not revenge," Victor said. "This is justice." "Is there a difference?" Victor thought about that. He thought about Richard Hashville in his fancy office. He thought about all the people Richard had stepped on over the years. He thought about all the lives Richard had ruined, all the people Richard had called grass. "Yes," Victor said, "there is a difference." Mama Grace looked at him for a long time. Then she squeezed his hand and let go. "Then do what you need to do," she said. "But come back and see me when it is over. I want to make sure you are still the same boy I have always known." "I will always be that boy," Victor said. Mama Grace stood up. She bent down and kissed him on the top of his head. "Eat your food," she said. "It is getting cold." She walked back to the kitchen. Victor watched her go. Then he turned back to his plate. He ate his dinner. He ate every bite. When he was done, he left a $100 bill on the table. He walked out the door. The sun was gone now. The street lights were on. The city was different at night. It was darker, it was quieter, it was more honest. In the daytime, everyone wore masks. At night, the masks came off. Victor got into his car. He pulled out his phone. He pressed a button. "Start phase 1, he said. "Consider it done," the voice replied. Victor hung up. He started his car. He drove home. Phase 1 was simple. Richard Hashville had a lot of investments. He had money in real estate. He had money in stocks. He had money in private companies. He thought his money was safe. He thought his money was protected. He was wrong. Victor had spent the last 6 months studying Richard Hashville. He knew every company Richard owned. He knew every stock Richard held. He knew every deal Richard had made. He knew where every penny was hidden. And now he was going to start moving the pieces. By tomorrow morning, 3 of Richard's biggest investments would be in trouble. A tech company would lose a major contract. A real estate deal would fall through. A private equity fund would announce unexpected losses. None of this would be traced back to Victor. None of this would seem connected. It would all look like bad luck. It would all look like the market, but it was not bad luck. It was not the market, it was Victor. Richard Hashville had called him grass. Richard Hashville had said he could step on him without noticing. Richard Hashville was about to notice. The next morning started like any other for Richard Hashville. He woke up at 6. He exercised for 1 hour. He ate breakfast made by his personal chef. He read the Wall Street Journal. He drank coffee that cost $50 a pound. He felt like a king. His phone rang at 8:30. It was his assistant, Diane. "Mr. Hashville," she said. Her voice sounded strange. "You need to come to the office right away." "What is wrong?" Richard asked. "There is a problem with Vertex Technologies," Diane said. "They lost the government contract. The stock is down 30%. Richard almost dropped his coffee. Vertex Technologies was one of his biggest investments. He owned 18% of the company. 30% down meant he had just lost over $200 million. "How did this happen?" Richard demanded. "I do not know," Diane said. "The news just broke. Everyone is calling." Richard hung up. He grabbed his jacket. He was out the door in 3 minutes. By the time he reached his office, the news had gotten worse. The real estate deal in Miami had collapsed. The buyer had pulled out at the last minute. Richard was now stuck with a building he had paid $400 million for, a building nobody wanted. And that was not all. His private equity fund had announced losses of $150 million. A company in the fund had been caught cooking their books. The SEC was investigating. Richard sat at his desk. His hands were shaking. 3 disasters in one morning. 3 separate investments. 3 massive losses. It had to be a coincidence. It had to be bad luck. His phone rang again. It was Harold Stone. "Richard," Harold said, "I heard the news. Bad day." "It is just a bump," Richard said. He tried to keep his voice steady. "Markets go up and down. You know how it is." "I do," Harold said. "But Richard, I have to tell you something. The board has been talking. They are worried about your judgment." "My judgment," Richard said. "I have made this company billions of dollars." "You have," Harold said, "but you have also made enemies. And enemies have a way of causing problems." "What are you saying, Harold?" There was a pause on the line. Richard could hear Harold breathing. "I am saying be careful," Harold said. "Someone out there does not like you, and whoever they are, they have very long arms." Harold hung up. Richard stared at his phone. He thought about his enemies. He had many. You did not become a billionaire without making enemies. But who had the power to do this? Who could reach into 3 different investments and destroy them all at once? Richard did not know. But he was going to find out. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare for Richard Hashville. Every day brought new disasters. A lawsuit appeared out of nowhere. A bank called in a loan early. A business partner suddenly backed out of a deal. His stock portfolio dropped by 20%, then 30%, then 40%. Richard hired investigators. He hired lawyers. He hired consultants. None of them could find anything. There was no pattern. There was no connection. There was just one piece of bad luck after another. But Richard knew better. This was not luck. This was war. Someone was attacking him. Someone was tearing apart everything he had built. And he had no idea who. On the 15th day, Richard got a phone call. The caller ID showed a number he did not know. He almost did not answer, but something made him pick up. "Richard Hashville," he said. "Mr. Hashville." The voice was calm and smooth. "We need to talk." "Who is this?" "We met a few weeks ago. You called me grass. You said you could step on me and not even notice." Richard's blood went cold. He remembered now. The young black man with the blue folder. Victor Johnson. "You," Richard said. "You are doing this." "I am," Victor said, "and I am just getting started." Richard stood up from his desk. He began to pace. His heart was pounding. "Why?" Richard demanded. "What do you want? Money? Is this blackmail?" "I do not want your money," Victor said. "I have more money than you." That is impossible, Richard said. I am worth $4 billion. You are worth $4 billion, Victor said. After the last 2 weeks, you are worth about $2.3 billion. And by the end of the month, you will be worth much less. Richard stopped pacing. He felt dizzy. He felt sick. How? Richard whispered. How are you doing this? I told you, Victor said. You did not know me. You did not know where I came from. You did not know what I was going to do. You looked at my face and decided I was nothing. You were wrong. What do you want? Richard asked again. Everyone wants something. Name your price. There was a pause on the line. When Victor spoke again, his voice was different. It was softer. It was sadder. I want you to understand, Victor said. I want you to know what it feels like to be looked at and dismissed. I want you to know what it feels like to be called nothing. I want you to feel what every person you have ever stepped on has felt. So this is revenge, Richard said. This is personal. No, Victor said, this is justice. There is a difference. What is the difference?